Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Jim K. Ford Sens Nation podcast. It is Steve Warren along with the coach Greg Kennedy. Greg, how are you today?
I'm very good, Stephen. I just got back from a weekend in Oshawa at the, it's now called Ontario Tech University. What it was once Durham, and then it turned into UQIT or something. We were down there to wrap up our Challenger Series with Jamaica and Puerto Rico. It was quite the weekend.
Yeah, we should define once again for new listeners who we is. What is the team we're talking about?
The national men's hockey team of Lebanon. I am the head coach. We've been playing this series over the course of the summer with these other two clubs. We had a weekend in Chicago. We had a weekend in Long Island. And this was the wrap-up weekend. And we beat Puerto Rico in the semifinal. We lost to Jamaica in the final yesterday. Yeah, Saturday. What a tough. It was a goaltender's duel, Steve. It was 12-8. Kind of an ugly game. Yeah, we had a 3-1 lead halfway through the first, and yeah, it was ugly, really ugly.
But you're helping to build the great game of hockey that we love across the planet, and good on you for that.
Yes,
we should get into some Sens talk here, and one of the things I want to talk about here in the heart of July was how this team really has three key players. This team has had all kinds of injury problems. You can diagnose this team as being kind of a death by 1,000 cuts kind of team in terms of why they've missed the playoffs the last 2-3 years. But one of the big things that some people say, oh, that's an excuse. Shut up with the excuses. But injuries are a factor. And this team has had more than its share of injuries. And three players in particular intrigue me because they're so well paid. They all make in and around $8 million a year. They have all had injury problems, two of them more chronic than the other. But last season, they had significant injury problems that either kept them out or kept them from being at their best. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Josh Norris, Thomas Chabot, and Tim Stutzle. All three of those guys have got to have a bounce back in both the health and returning to form component. So let's begin with Thomas Chabot, because in my opinion, he's the guy that most needs a return to health and a return to form, because he's in a situation now where we've got a left shot deficit now all of a sudden. Left shot skill on the Ottawa Senators blue line, if you can believe it, really can't afford a Thomas Chabot absence again for over 30 games like he had last season. He had wrist surgery last year in the offseason back in May, and now you got to hope that he's going to play 82 games for you, because all of a sudden you don't have Eric Brandstrom as a fill-in. Jacob Chikrin is gone. So it's interesting how things have kind of flip-flopped. What was once a surplus left shot skill defenseman, now they can't really afford a Chabot or a Sanderson getting hurt.
Exactly. And I think really we're talking about three guys here who need to have a bounce back. Other than Brady Tkachuk and Sanderson, who doesn't need to have a bounce back? But specifically discussing Chabot here first, I just keep wondering, what is a bounce back? Like what is he? What is it that he should be producing at? What numbers should he be putting up? How should he play? How should he look? Because we've seen three sort of Thomas Chabots over his career here so far. You know, the young guy finding his way, and then he seemed to settle in. And I thought, okay, he's about a 50-point guy, maybe a 40 to 50-point guy. And then in the last few years, it's just been, wow, all these injuries and not really producing and not really playing as well as he did in the earlier days. So I'm wondering, what is Thomas Chabot? When we see Thomas Chabot, what are we going to see? What type of player is he? How does he fit in? How many minutes does he play? So but I'm also of the opinion that he will benefit from Travis Green and from Nolan Baumgartner. I know you're not as big a fan, but I just think he's going to be a much better player moving forward. Health being the one important caveat because of these injuries that he seems to keep having and risky things and hand injuries, right? I think that if he's healthy for a full year, I think he can produce at 50 points. I think he can contribute on a power play. And I think he can play and play well and look good for this team this year. I really do. I believe that will be the case this season.
I think the big thing he's got going for him, and by the way, 55 points was
There you
his
go.
max, I think, in 2018-19. And then DJ Smith comes to town and overuses the heck out of him. If you look at it, 2018-19, he has that 55-point year. DJ Smith is so in love with this guy. He adds, and he's already got a pretty taxing workload at around 24 minutes. DJ Smith adds 2.5 minutes time on ice on average to his workload, and I just don't think he's got the body for that, to be
Yeah, but
honest.
what is he though? That's the thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's capable of that 55 points. I think he's a good puck mover. If he's put in the right circumstances, again, dial back the minutes, and Jacques Martin dabbled in that this year. If you manage his minutes better, keep him in and around a 22, 23 minute mark would be ideal. Then you factor in that he's going to have a stable defensive partner all season long. Everybody's playing on their right side, the proper side, I should say. Then you factor in, you've got Linus Ullmark, who's going to provide some stability back there. You're going to have, like you talked about, presumably better defense under a new head coach. So I think everything is working in his favor if it goes that way. So yeah, he can be a 55-point guy, and I think probably a little better defensively than he's been in recent years. The injuries have been a factor because he's played through that wrist problem. Like he talked about that wrist problem going into last off season.
Yeah,
it was like a cracked bone and a ripped tendon in his wrist, and now he's finally had the surgery in May. So hopefully that's behind him. Steve Stais said it went well, and so if all the things come together and he can stay healthy, and his defensive partner stays healthy as well, I think that's a guy that can return. He's never going to be great defensively. To me, he's regressed defensively. I think he can get a little of that back if he stays healthy, and everything I just talked about. But he's not great defensively. But I think he can go back to being a point producer, the number one offensive defenseman on this team, and we'll go from there. That's my expectation.
and I think the biggest thing is nobody's going to benefit more from actually having a stable top four than Thomas Chabot will. Like we've seen what Jake Sanderson could do when there isn't a stable top four, and he's just going to get better and better. But Thomas Chabot is really going to benefit from that. And you talk about his minutes and reducing his time on ice. The crazy thing is the guy hardly ever kills penalties. Like he plays 5-on-5 and he plays power play, and he's still playing 25, 26 minutes a night. That's the crazy thing. He needs to get down to 20, 21, 22, something like that. That seems to be the number, I think, when he's most effective. Because the one thing you talk about is how often it looks like he's just sort of gliding. It looks like he plays a lot of the game in energy conservation mode. Like he's not the type that you see going all out all the time. And that's not to say that it's not that he's lazy or that he can't do it or doesn't want to do it. I think it's because he just knows that he can't. He can't be that guy. He can't be that all out all the time guy at 26 minutes a night. So he will benefit from the coaching staff, like you just said, a defensive structure from day one of training camp, but also from that they will play him differently, and he will benefit from having a top 4D that can actually play, and he doesn't have to be the number one guy all the time.
Now back to my thought on Jacob Chychrun being gone and Eric Brandstrom being gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like that really does put them in an awkward spot if a Chabot or a Sanderson gets hurt. Chabot is the discussion point because he's coming off the injury. I'm talking about him as he's got to get healthy and he's got to return to form. But if either of those left shot D go, in the past you had, Chychrun's right there. Or Eric Brandstrom can come up and do a pretty decent Thomas Chabot impression. He's not Thomas Chabot, but same kind of player, puck mover, not physical at all. It's interesting. Thomas Chabot did not even average one hit per game last season. Eric Brandstrom failed to manage one hit every other game last season. So both non-physical, but both have some skill. And in a pinch, you could roll with a guy like Brandstrom, which is why I was talking about earlier in the offseason that when you asked me about Brandstrom and his future, I was going to hang on to him just because I'd like to have a security blanket. And at that time, I didn't know what was going to happen with Chychrun. Now we know he's gone. And so if Chabot or Sanderson get hurt, who's coming into your top four? Tyler Clevin? Yeah. I'm not even sure he can play in the NHL yet, let alone in your top four. Then your depth chart after that, glancing at it this morning, is Philip Roos, who had a handful of games with the Chicago Blackhawks, Swedish defenseman, tall, don't know much about him. But if the worst team in the NHL, or second worst, isn't using you much, that's a red flag for me. And he's in his mid-20s. He's not a kid. And then you have Jeremy Davies, who's a very well-regarded American Hockey League player who's making big money by AHL standards. He would be next as far as left shot D goes. So it gets thin really, really in a hurry now after Sanderson and Thomas Chabot.
Well, that's why I firmly believe that that's still on the shopping list for this team. And there's lots of time before training camp. There's lots of free agent possibilities out there. I firmly believe this team will find a left shot defenseman, probably more like a 4-5-6, obviously, than a 1-2-3. They'll go find somebody. I don't know whether it's an Oliver Shillington, who's a free agent still out of Calgary. There's a number of guys out there. I know I made a list one week, and then we who else? Wait a minute. You know what, Steve? I have a list. I did make.
You have the list.
I have a list. Well. Oliver Shillington was on my list. I had Justin Schultz on my list. I had I can't even read my writing now. I hate it when that happens. But the big one to me was Shillington. I thought he was a guy who could come in here. Oh, Marco Scandella, that was the other one. Like, you're just looking for a guy in the 4-5-6. You're looking for the Michael Delzados of the past, the Goodbransons of the past, even the Travis Hamonic of the past, but somebody who can still play. Somebody who's not too old and too slow, who can actually be effective for you. That's what you're looking for now and what's left in the free agent market. They'll still sign somebody. They'll bring somebody in here.
Yeah, and I'd rather be shopping for a left shot D than a right shot D.
Right.
There's a scarcity out there of right shot D. The Athletic did a poll, not a poll. They just did the math. They went through the league and saw who was a right shot D and a left shot D, and there were 300 and I think it was, we'll call it 300. And I think the breakdown was something like 175 left shot D, 125 right shot D.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a good right shot D, as the Sens did in Nick Jensen. You tend to hang on to that, and that's why I think that deal was a really good one for the Ottawa Senators. I know there's some people who say, okay, well, when you think about market value, nobody thought about Nick Jensen. Like, Chikrin's thought of, I think, in a top 40, top 50 in the NHL. I don't know if Nick Jensen's thought of in the top 100, but I think it really speaks to, like, the Norris Trophy discussion we always have. It's for the best offensive defenseman. I think fans and media both measure defensemen on their ability to score points and be good with the puck. The defensive defenseman has always been, and I think always will be, insanely, criminally underrated. And so that's why I think the Nick Jensen thing is a good thing for the Ottawa Senators. It was a great need, and it's a very underrated type of a player.
Go back and look over your history of the Ottawa Senators. Guys like Philip Kuba played a pretty big role here. Mark Mathot playing with Carlson. Before that, you had Anton Volchenkov was a very important guy, and he wouldn't have been in anybody's top 50. Even you go back to Stan Netchkash. Remember him? Like, there's a guy who was a solid citizen in your top four. He's a shutdown guy. Like, that guy who plays that role isn't the guy in the headlines, isn't the guy in the score sheet, but he's the guy who's just steady Eddie. He's there every night, solid in his own zone, and just supports the stud who's on his left. And that's, I hope, that's what Nick Jensen's going to be.
Okay, let's get back on track a little bit. I got us off the road a little. Thomas Chabot, okay, he's one guy that needs a return to health and a return to form. Josh Norris, I think that speaks for itself. That shoulder injury, I think, is a worry for every Senator fan. I don't have him as the number one guy as far as the worry goes, because honestly, I think with Shane Pinto here now, I think he might have already surpassed Josh Norris as far as a second line center goes. It depends on the health of Norris and the psyche of Norris, because if you look at a points per game paces, both guys missed a bunch of time. Norris to the injury, Pinto to the suspension, but from a points per game standpoint, Norris is 49 points, and I believe Pinto was at 54, parlayed over 82 games. So he may have already passed him. So I don't look at Norris breaking down to be a great tragedy, an irreplaceable situation, but it will leave a deficit. You'd prefer Josh Norris to be in the lineup and healthy, but also playing like Josh Norris can, not so much like Josh Norris did last season.
Right. So if he plays the full season, returns to health, whether it's in the 2-hole or whether it's the third line center, he's an important part of this team. He gives you that depth down the middle. So maybe he is more suited to bear with me, Steve. Maybe he is more suited to be on the second line than the third line, because your third line guy needs to be a solid two-way, 200-foot guy, physical presence. Like, that guy needs to be there all the time, because it's like an energy line. There needs to be a lot more physicality. If he can play in the second line, if he's healthy all year, and be a setup guy, but then again, he's probably more of a finisher. But if he plays in an offensive role, in a role that requires more of the offensive side than the defensive side, I think that's where he'll benefit, and that's where the bounce back will come. If he ends up in the 3-hole, I don't know what kind of numbers he's going to put up. Safe to say he wouldn't be putting up the gaudy numbers that he put up earlier in his career if he's in the 3-hole.
I don't see any. If he's healthy, I think. Unless his game completely falls apart, and I don't know. I don't know where we're at with Josh Norris. I thought that he was a kind of a careful-looking player last year when he was in the lineup, and just when he was starting to get out of that mode and start to look like his old self, then he gets hurt again. I don't see him, if he's healthy and playing at least decently, falling out of the top 6. I do think there's a chance that you have Pinto play the second line and maybe Norris moves or something like that, but it's not ideal, obviously. If he is out of the lineup from a center ice perspective, you've still got Stutzle, Pinto, Greg, Noah Gregor, pretty good center, in a fourth line way. So I think you probably. Sorry, I lost my earpiece. I won't be able to hear you, so I better put it back in. But I do think that this is a guy who scored 35 goals in the league.
Exactly.
So that's a guy that's invaluable to this team if he's healthy. So if he can play, he's in your top 6 in some manner. But we'll see how it goes. But again, like I said, with Thomas Chabot, that's a guy that's got to be back and healthy, and but not just that, but returning to form.
Yeah.
And the third guy, less so, because the other two guys are more chronic. Chabot has missed substantial time in each of the last 3 seasons. Everybody knows Norris's story. With Tim Stutzle, on the other hand, it's been more this past season. At the season-ending media availability, he volunteered to the media that he's been dealing with something through most of the season, like nagging injuries. And maybe that's the telltale sign of why he had the drop-off. Like, he had a big drop-off. Like, he still had a great season. 70 points is nothing to scoff at. But so much of the season, he seemed discouraged. He had half the number of goals that he had the year before, and he went from 90 points to 70 points. So he needs a big bounce back, because this team's not making the playoffs if this guy is, by his standards, scuffling.
Yeah, and same thing with him. It was a hand thing or a shoulder thing or a neck thing, whatever it officially was. It affected his shot more than anything. Like, he just wasn't able to score. And as the more the year went on, the less it seemed that he was shooting, and the more it seemed he was looking to pass or deke. Right. It just seemed that affected him in a way. And he's also a guy who's got such a fragile confidence level. Like, his line between hunky-dory and frustrated as hell is very soft. He crosses into that frustration area, and it seems to take him out of his game. Earlier in his career, it was when guys would chirp at him or hack him or something, and then he would get frustrated and kind of disappear. This past season, it was lack of success, and you'd see him just kind of drop down, and the body language, the facial expressions, the aw shucks and the arms in the air and all that sort of stuff. His frustration seemed to come out, and he had a tough year. And the frustration, obviously, we now know wasn't just from the lack of production, but it was probably from the injury that affected him to cause this lack of production. And he's probably just as much ticked at his injury that he was at the results.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that's a player that's in major violation of what I like as a golden rule in most sports, individual and team, and that's never too high, never too low. I think he is way too high when things are good. It's party time, woohoo. And then when things aren't going well, individually, he's not going well. I think he gets so down on himself. You see it just, like you talked about, coming off the ice. It's the worst thing. Like, I hope that that's something that Travis Green knows to address,
Yeah.
because I think you look defeated. And what energizes another team? What energizes the Ottawa Senators' opponent more than maybe their best player looking like he's completely rattled? We're in his kitchen, boys. We got him now. So you can't have that. And the other angle, I think, that's contributed to his mental situation, and it's not a situation, it's part of the game. You want to be supremely confident. You want to be positive. You want to be on your game physically and mentally. I think that the dive thing has gotten to him a little bit. Like, I think he really takes it to heart that he's been vilified by other teams and other teams' fan bases. You go on social media, mention Tim Stutzle. Nobody in Ottawa talks about it. But I put up an article about Tim Stutzle at the Hockey News over the weekend. And there were 2 or 3 comments from other NHL markets referencing the diving. And I think that is something that he's also got to get past as well, because I think that it bugged him. I think he's used to being a beloved hockey player, and I think this is a big piece of adversity for him that maybe isn't talked about nearly enough.
Yeah, it's that reputation sort of attached itself to him early in his career, just like Sidney Crosby for his first couple of years. He was a whiner, right? Remember those days? I don't know that anybody would say Sidney Crosby's a whiner anymore, but at least a Pittsburgh market would not say that. Other markets probably still do because they remember it from his early days. And that was sort of what got stuck on Stutzle. Idiots like Brendan Gallagher making comments about it, and the odd call once in a while that he got where Stutzle was called for embellishment. But I don't think it's an issue anymore. I don't see it as being a part of his game. He's not a diver, I don't think. But you're right. He had
his moments.
Yes, he's had his moments for sure. But there are demons there. There are other things that need to happen in order for him to be most successful on the ice. It's like, you get this straightened out, get that straightened out, get my focus, get my confidence, get my frustration parked, and get this injury bug and nagging crap taken care of, and just go play hockey. And if that's the case, this guy's a 40 goal scorer. He's a 90-point guy, right? And that's the numbers that I think he should be shooting for. And I firmly believe that, every once in a while, there's a team in the NHL where all of a sudden they have that big point jump. It was New Jersey 2 years ago. Like, I can see it being Ottawa this year. I really can. Like, I can see Travis Green getting Jack Adams votes because his team suddenly has a 15 or 20 point jump this year. And a lot of it is going to be not just on Linus Ullmark, but a lot of it's going to be because Timmy Stutzle is going to emerge this year. Brady Tkachuk riding shotgun with him, and the health of Norris and the health of Chabot, as we've talked about, and the continued excellence of Claude Giroux, and the emergence of finally playing an 82-game season of a Pinto. Like, I can just see everything coming together here. It's all set up. It's all ready to happen. And I could see a big jump coming this year.
I am so done with old school Christmas lights. The tangling, the burning out, the minus 30-degree installation dangling from a ladder. Goodbye Christmas lights. Hello Celebrite, your permanent holiday lighting solution. I've got them on my home right now. When it's daylight, they're absolutely invisible. But at nighttime, things come to life. Right now, with the beautiful weather, we're looking forward to Canada Day. And of course, the classic colors of Christmas. You can really make the lights dance, all controlled from your smartphone. And on those nights when there is no occasion or holiday, you can roll with just a beautiful, subtle white light. And the installation team from Celebrite Ottawa was fantastic. So you can keep on rolling with old school Christmas lights, or you can contact them today at celebrite.ca. Yay! You mentioned Claude Giroux. He's about to play in that what do they call it? It's not the Mackenzie Tour anymore. It's
the Americas Tour.
PGA, the
Americas
Tour. Exactly.
Yeah,
the PGA Americas Tour. I think it is something along those lines. And that's coming to Eagle Creek very shortly, later this month. And so a number of the Senators are going to play it, and so is Claude Giroux. And you mentioned him, and I was thinking about him today because so much of the focus would have been this season on Jacob Chychrun. Is he going to sign an extension or is he not going to sign an extension? But he's gone now. But the other guy that's always been kind of lurking there in the weeds is a guy who's the same contractual status, and that's Claude Giroux. He has 1 year left on a contract that will pay him $7 million for the coming season. And he still has not won a Stanley Cup. But Ottawa's his hometown. And, he's this season has got to get off to a good start. Like, if you're a Claude Giroux fan and you want him to finish his career here, and we'll have that same conversation about Brady Tkachuk in coming years, but this team needs to get off to a great start. If they do what they've done under DJ Smith and basically throw a grenade on their season in the first month, I don't know if Claude Giroux is going to necessarily want to sign an extension with this team. He may want to, because lots of guys go their whole career without winning a Stanley Cup. It'd be nice and everything, but a third straight year of coming in and missing the playoffs, I don't think, it's what he signed up for from a family perspective, and it's been all gold that way, but it's certainly not what he signed up for as far as a very competitive future Hall of Famer. I think he thought they were a lot closer than they actually have been.
Yeah, it's a pressure point for sure for this team, not just his contract status. Linus Ullmark, right? He hasn't started talking yet. There's another one. You've got two fairly key pieces, one in a leadership role, a diminishing offensive contributions, but leadership role, heart and soul type of leadership guy in Giroux, and the backbone of your defense, your number one goalie here. You really need to get off to a good start. You really need to have a good season so that these guys can look around and say, yeah, okay, things are going in the right direction, and I want to be a part of that. I want to stay here. So, but I mean, they can't possibly, Steve. Can this team possibly have another bad start? Is that even possible? It cannot happen. There's just no way that is not going to happen. No way.
An injury or two on that blue line, and you never know. You never know. I'm still encouraged. I still feel like they will compete for a playoff spot, and I believe they will get there this year. But, yeah, I mean, who knows? You never really can tell. Moving on, though. Moving on. Linus Ullmark in the news, in that, not the news so much, but he was in Ottawa for the first time. About a week ago, he was in town to see the sights. I guess starting to look for a house, I guess, or living accommodations for his wife and his two kids. And he took a spin around the Canadian Tire Center. And we saw him in the media availability after the trade went down. Sens acquiring him from Boston for a first rounder and Jonas Korpisalo. And so I think everybody thought, okay, that's a great first impression. But it's even better. When the social media cameras for the Sens, they're following him around the CTC as he's walking into the building. He meets, as he's walking along, he meets Steve Stais. He meets Ryan Bonus, Allison Vaughn. Thomas Chabot was there. Travis Green was there. And listen, this is the first time this guy's meeting them, and he's carrying the conversation. Like he seems like the veteran one welcoming them. So I wanted to play a little bit of it just to give you a sense of the likable factor that Linus Ullmark brings to the table.
Same way as always, just a little bit further. Couple days, get me a little sorted out with the hotel, and then go to look at some housing, stuff like that. Try to get everything kind of settled before the family arrives, and when we get back in August. Yeah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How's it going?
Welcome.
Thank you.
See you.
Nice to meet you, Linus.
Everything's good?
Everything's great. Good. What about these fellas? Nice to meet you, Sean. Linus. Double Sean? Nice. Easy. Do you live together as well? Hi, Allison. Linus. Nice to meet you as well.
Welcome to Ottawa.
Thank you. How much French do I need to learn?
You and me both. We're going to do it together.
Do we have French lessons?
We're going to have to do it together. I'm on Babbel right now.
But it's nice that it's both English and French, so you can kind of get a sense of what each word means, and then it's all about building it. But I mean, that was the case as well back home. I learned German and my wife learned Spanish, so the only language we didn't learn was French. Look at us now. It's always weird walking into a new locker room, which you've never seen any pictures of or anything like that.
Yeah.
And there's a new team, and you're always used to going in a certain direction and never pass a certain line.
Yeah.
So it's a nice experience. Hello. What's up? Doing well. Alex, nice to meet you. Linus.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for the note when you.
No worries. I mean, I'm going to see you guys an awful lot during the season, so I might as well get all cooped up and ready to roll.
You know who gets this job done. You always got to go to the equipment guys.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, these are my fellas. These are my boys. Oh, yeah. What's up? You just came out of the gym or what? In the office. Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah, well.
I could tell from a mile away that was a goalie walk. Little struts. What's up, buddy?
Shabby.
Nice to meet you. Linus, nice.
Happy to have you.
Thank you. We're taking care of the fellas here as well now during Dev Camp, or what?
No,
nice meeting you, buddy.
I'm heading out.
Yeah, take
All
care.
the best.
I'll see you down the road
See
as
you
well.
soon.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. When did you get in?
Well, right now?
Just came from the airport.
Yeah.
We're going for dinner tonight.
Yep.
I'll meet you. I think we got 7 o'clock.
I'm gonna have to take a nap and a couple of shots of espresso. No, we'll be fine. Corgi. Yeah, call Bob.
So there's Linus Ullmark, the newest Ottawa senator. Well, not the newest, but new this offseason, and hopefully rescuing the goaltending situation. But, well, if Pierre Dorion were still here, he would be thrilled with this guy because he would be another high-character guy to add to this dressing room.
Yeah. The coolest thing in all of that, well, maybe the fact that his corgi's name is Bob, but I thought the coolest thing in all of that, and he mentioned it in his initial press release too, was about French. Oh, he's going to learn to speak French. I mean, here's a guy who's obviously Swedish. He learned to speak English, and then he said German while his wife learned Spanish. So I wouldn't put it past him. This guy's going to be doing interviews in French. Like, that's just the right attitude about everything. And just walked around the place like the friendliest guy. You're, like you said, you're expecting everybody who's greeting him to be the more friendly and the more outgoing and the more pumped up of the people. But it seemed to be him. Every time everybody he bumped into was like the greatest thing in the world. And the other thing I got out of it was he seemed to talk to Steve Staios as if he didn't know that Steve Staios played in the NHL. There was a couple.
What made you say that?
Well, just when he said, well, you go into a new rink and you have to adjust to this, and things aren't where they belong and everything. It just, there was other comments in there that seemed like, that guy played the show. It just seemed that maybe he wasn't aware of that part. It was kind of funny anyway.
1,001 games. 1,001 games, Linus. Yeah, so it's possible. But, I mean, terrific guy, and I think fans are going to like him, but it could all erode quickly if he doesn't just stop the puck. That's really all anybody wants at this stage of the game. This team is filled with nice guys. That's a bonus. That's gravy. But, JSP, just stop pucks. That's what we're looking for at this stage of the game. So a neat bit of social media. Congratulations to the Sens media team, social media team there. Doing a really good job. Lots of really interesting content that they're pumping out there. A couple of other things before we go, and that would be David Perron. I got to say, mixed blessing, because what I did was, because obviously Steve Staios is going to sing his praises. He just signed the guy to a 2-year contract worth $8 million. Couple of red flags when I reached out to the Hockey News' Sam Stockton, who's the Detroit Red Wings beat reporter there, who's watched David Perron play every hockey game for the last 2 seasons. And this is what he had to say about David Perron. Like I say, there's a couple of things that are probably going to shock you right out of the gate, but trust me, it gets better. David Perron will be missed in Detroit. Yes, he is now one of the slowest players in the National Hockey League. And yes, as Sens fans well know, he has something of a penchant for needless penalties. But and it's going to get better now. Here's the good stuff. In their push from the bottom of the Atlantic to the painfully close playoff brink, Perron made the Red Wings better. Despite the lack of foot speed, his proficiency along the boards and craftiness in finding space in the offensive zone means he remains an attacking player, doesn't sacrifice defense to find his points. He remains an effective player on the flank on the power play with a knack for completing passes into the slot and no worries about forcing the issue with one-timers when the circumstances call for it. A lot of money at 36, but you can be assured of one thing with Perron. He's going to be relentless every night, a spark of energy for his teammates. Perron's teammates would all describe his voice in the locker room as ever-present, demanding a standard of competitiveness that helped push the Wings toward the playoffs. There's no reason that should not travel to Ottawa, regardless of age. Sounds like a guy who's not got the wheels that will excite anybody, but when it comes to scoring in the offensive zone, doing the dirty work, that's a guy you need all season long. But if they ever do get to the playoffs, that's where Perron's colors will really shine.
Yeah, and don't forget the leadership aspect of it, right? I'm thinking he's probably a 50-point guy.
Mm-hmm.
Are we
That's
thinking
fair.
he's in around 50 points this year? He'll play probably on the second unit on the power play. He'll play a regular shift in the top six. I'm thinking on his off wing, he's probably going to play the left side. And okay, is he going to be the same player in the second year that he is in the first year? I don't know, but I don't really care. And I don't think Steve Stales and company care either. They just want him to come in here and contribute. And I'll say this, I think that he will be more consistent. He will contribute more consistently than either the Cat or the Tarasenko did the last 2 years. I think David Perron is a guy who's, mainly because his role isn't flashy goal scorer, his role is up and down the wing, grind it out, dig pucks out of corners, get pucks out on the wall in his own zone. The things that he brings are easier to consistently do for that type of player. And I think he will be a much more consistent performer than either of the last two experimental offseason acquisitions.
I'd agree. Yeah, I think he's going to impact hockey games on a more consistent basis.
Yeah.
So long as he doesn't cross-check any Ottawa Senator in the head.
Yeah.
That's all we ask, really, at the end of the day. But you're right. I like that point you have about who cares about next year. I mean, of course I care about next year. It's a 2-year contract. You'd like him to be great for 2 years. But this season, and even if Ullmark doesn't re-sign, even if Giroux doesn't re-sign, Perron's not that great in his second year. This year is really, really key because I think you've got a core here that, while talented, is really discouraged and ready to taste some kind of, positivity, ready to taste winning, ready to get to the playoffs. Did you know that Brady Tkachuk and Thomas Chabot right now are 4th and 6th in the NHL right now among active players, games played without ever having been in a Stanley Cup playoff game? So just to get this team rolling in the right direction, like that's part of development, right? Enjoying coming to the rink, if you hate coming to the rink and you're always losing, you're always having to deal with the media, what went wrong tonight? Like that's going to get in your head after a while. They've got to have a turnaround season this year. Even if it's not a playoff season, this group has to get a feel that it's going in the right direction.
And you've already gone out there and said they're a playoff team. And I've now gone out there and said I can seriously see this team being a 15, 20 points better than last year and being that one team in the NHL where some markets they're going to say, oh, it's a surprise. But around here, it will not be seen as a surprise. This is a team that is ready to break out as a team. This was a big year, and I'm definitely going to be a breakout year. And I guess if I think they're going to be a 15, 20-point better team, then I guess I'm with you, Steve, and they're a playoff team, right? If they get that many more points, they're going to make the playoffs. That's what's going to happen this year, folks. Be prepared for it.
Nice. First time we've ever been on the same page. I like that. That's
with the playoffs,
that's a good harbinger right there. But now I can't get Craig Button out of my head hollering last fall something along the lines of, the Ottawa Senators stock is rising and I'm buying big time. Something along those lines. I feel like we sound like that right now. A couple of notes before we go. I wanted to mention that they announced this week that Belleville will play Laval on Wednesday, February 12th at the CTC during the NHL break for the Four Nations Cup. Yeah, that'll be kind of a cool thing. And capfriendly.com, which was a friend to hockey fans and media alike, went dark finally this week. They were sold to the Washington Capitals. And now we're all scrambling to find, there's 3 or 4 that are out there, but scrambling to find the best possible replacement. It'll take some getting used to. I got to say that. I'm on Puckpedia, for example, and I'm not seeing stats. I'm on, I'm looking at, I can't tell if they're a left shot D or a right shot D. They don't really track. So it's going to take some getting used to, but We'll all survive, I'm sure.
I love Hockey Reference. I'd like to see Hockey Reference maybe upgrade to doing cap stuff on their site. That it's an excellent site, but for cap stuff, yeah, Cap Geek. Like there's not much out there.
No,
Puckpedia.
it doesn't exist.
Yeah, right. Cap Geek died, and you got Puckpedia, and there's one other one that I was looking at. I can't even remember the name of the thing. So if somebody knows something, please let us know. Or better still, if somebody out there wants to start up a cap friendly, feel free. I'd be happy to support you.
Yeah, it's puckpedia.com. There's spotrack.com. I believe it's capwages.com. Don't
Maybe
quote
that's
me
the
on
one
that.
I was on.
It's a fairly new one. But it really is an important asset for hockey fans, because it's not just like when you and I were kids, we'd trade hockey cards, got them, need them, got them, and we'd make trades based on whether we like the player or not. Hockey fans used to be the same way. You'd analyze a trade, hockey for trade. A true hockey trade rarely comes along anymore without us having to say, well, why did they make that deal exactly? Oh, I see. He's only got 1 year left on his contract. Or, oh, that guy makes this. And now we're scrambling to find that information. You need it to be a hockey fan in 2024. That's it for today's show, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you being here today. Don't forget that our website is sensnationhockey.com. You can find information and contact details about this program. And as well, there's a link to the hockey news right there as well. So check that out, and we'll call it a day right there, sensnationhockey.com. My name is Steve Warren. That is the coach, Greg Kennedy. Congratulations. Did you get a silver medal for the weekend?
Yeah, well, there was no medals. They got a big trophy. We got nothing and liked it.
All
Spalding.
right.
We were Spalding at the ninth at the halfway house there. You got nothing and like it.
Did you get a hamburger? No, a cheeseburger.
Cheeseburger. I want a cheeseburger. I want a hamburger. Yeah, no. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, have a good week, my friend.
You too. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody.
I want a hamburger. No, a cheeseburger. I want a hot dog. I want a milkshake. I want potato chips.
You'll get nothing and like it.